All right, guys, we're here with Kamau Murray. Kamau Murray is a founder of XS Tennis. Kamau, for people that don't know you, who are you and what's XS Tennis about?
Um, Grew up on the south side of Chicago, learned to play tennis in public parks. Played at the Hyde Park Racquetball Club, which was like the mecca of black tennis back in the day. And then went to Florida A&M on a tennis scholarship. Worked in pharmaceuticals for Pfizer for a long time in New York, and then in Chicago. And then started coaching kids in the public parks, and then sort of grew up from there. You know, had a couple kids that were, top 100 in the country, and sort of spiraled into that. And so just like a sort of an after work kind of passion turns into what is a career now.
Nice. And how did you, like, speaking of kids in the top 100, how did you manage to do that? What was your philosophy behind coaching players? And
I don't know that it's necessarily a philosophy. I think that you just try to get the fundamentals right, and not create a ceiling for a player with any funny grips, any like sort of bad technique. You don't let them sort of feel their way to the game. You kind of give them like the structure, and then I was blessed enough to have some good athletes, that could take that structure and the technique and then add their own sort of creativity, twist to it, be able to move and cover the court. And at the end of the day, tennis is about making more balls than the other person. So if you got good technique that works and you got good feet that move, then you can make more balls. And that really is sort of my theory to it. And the court is actually really big. If you look at a tennis court, there's more square feet of blue than green. So it actually is hard to miss if you're trying to make the ball, right? And so if you're trying to make the ball, then and technique's in place and the footwork is there, and the mindset is there, then it's actually not that hard. And so that's my philosophy, is just making the game very easy for players. I think tennis has a really poor history, or really bad history, I should say, of making this really complex in an effort to monetize it. So tennis clubs, we make it very hard to move up in the group, and we make it hard to get to the best coach in the building, and we make the game hard to understand until you buy X amount of lessons. And I think that is hurting us now, and which is why pickleball is taking over. And I think we're seeing the effects of the game being too hard. And so my philosophy from the start was just always make it easy.
yeah, well, so speaking of that, as like, it's interesting because you're talking about it's hard to get those lessons. Like, how does a kid like that's coming up and maybe his parents don't have the money, maybe his parents, are immigrants or something like that? What would you recommend if a kid's passionate about tennis? Like, how would you recommend they go about getting, the coaching, the whatever they need in order to achieve their highest level in their dreams?
I think the mistake that we make is we make even that complex. There's only one or two ways to teach a forehand. Like, Nadal's the only person on the planet that can hit a forehand like that, so we shouldn't try to duplicate that. We should just stick to basic technique. And if you're trying to obtain basic technique, you can do that in Iowa City, right? Kansas City. It doesn't have to be in Bradenton, Florida. It doesn't have to be in Carson, LA. It doesn't have to be at like John McEnroe's in New York City. It doesn't have to be there. And so I always like the big fish in a small pond. When you look at the kids that have made it, Sloan's from Fresno, Jack Sock's from KC, Roddick's from like Nebraska. There are players who have made it, who started in places other than Florida. Donald Young started in Chicago. Taylor Tomlin started in Chicago. James Blake from New York, right? You don't have to start in Florida or Texas to make it. And so if you got a good coach that teaches some basic technique, and you have the opportunity to access enough hours of that technique, meaning not just playing tennis for the hour that you're paying for, like coming here, hitting off the ball machine, finding a friend to play with and rally with, coming here, practicing your serve if you can't, right? That it really is tennis, And so if I'm of somebody with little resources, I'm gonna spend an hour or two of good money on good technique, and from there I'm gonna own it. I'm gonna find a couple friends to hit with, rent the ball machine, find a place that gives juniors free court time, like my place, right? And then put the time in. you know, because after all, it's all about mastery. And so if you get the technique, then you need to just go and get the 10,000 hours of mastery. You know?
Nice. Nice. What would you say it's like the most rewarding thing about being a coach and the most challenging? First the rewarding and then the most challenging.
I think the most challenging is that, you know, the player still has to execute. You can't do it for the player, right? You have all the right answers and you know what needs to be done. But when you step out on that court and that pressure hits or the nerves hit, you know, you got to have an appreciation for how hard it is for the player to execute in that moment. And I think a lot of coaches, you know, what makes it hard for coach is like lack of understanding for that process. Yeah, I know I told you to serve wide at, you know, 4-all deuce, but you just went to your habit, which is to kick T, right? You know what I mean? And you have to have an appreciation for that, saying, shit, I told you to serve wide. You did serve wide, right? And so I think that's the hard part, is not being able to do it for the player. And what was the second part of the question?
What's the most rewarding?
I mean, rewarding part is, you know, when they win, obviously. I mean, at the end of the day, sports is about winning. It's not about participation and having fun and, you know, having a good time. And, I mean, you know, that's like, to me, that is like a really bad goal. You know what I mean? If we're going to have somebody invest a lot of money and time and energy into tennis when they could be doing more homework, then we should set the goal of winning. And I think other countries are setting the goal of winning. The Italians, hey, we're in it to win it. Spaniards, we're in it to win it. In America, we got to stop like with this. Let's just have fun and participate. Let's have a good experience. Let's not do that. Let's go win, right? And so I think that is the most rewarding part of it. Holding a trophy is the goal, and it's okay to make that the goal and to be disappointed if you don't achieve that goal, right? And I think, I mean, people can agree to disagree. I'm not saying you make it the only goal and you feel like a failure if you don't win, but if that is not the goal, then your engine is not turning at down 3-0. You're like, okay, whatever, I'm out here, I'm having a good time, I showed up, you know, no. It's like, how do I come back, right? I'm 1 point away from turning this match around. And I think winning has to be the goal, and so the best part about that is when winning is the goal and you actually win.
Awesome. So speaking of goals, I know you got to go get going here
Yeah.
soon, so I'll finish up with the last couple questions. What's your goal for you? What's your goals?
My goal is just to help as many players as I can achieve their goals. I don't really have any personal goals in tennis. I never wanted to play tennis, so I'm not like, you know, trying to live through somebody else. I don't really like traveling. I actually don't even really like playing right now. You know what I mean? So all of my energy in tennis is spent towards helping somebody else achieve their goal. I don't have any agenda. My family's comfortable. I like to get paid for my time, right? That's no secret. I like to win and get that bonus, right?
Yes.
Very clear with every player I coach, hey, we're trying to win because I'm trying to get a bonus, right? But other than that, I mean, my only goal is to help the player achieve their goal and remove any obstacles that, you know, are preventing them from that, which are oftentimes complex: confidence, lack of commitment, fear, nervousness, lack of clarity, detachment from the results. Like all those kind of complex things, I enjoy that process. And so I enjoy having a deep relationship with the player where we can tackle those things, right? Because everybody can hit a ball. Every kid in college can hit a good ball. I was telling one of my students the other day, every college player does something at a pro level. Every kid at UCLA has 1 or 2 things that they actually do at a pro level, whether it's serve, or they got a pro level backhand, or they have a pro level forehand. They do something at a pro level. It's all the other things that they don't do that keep them in college. And so I'm in it for that process. You know what I mean? So most pros do everything at a pro level, and those that don't win don't tackle the off-the-court issues, the mental issues, the confidence, the professionalism, the preparation. That is like where you make the money in pro sports. Everybody else I take in forehand, backhand, serve. They all hit the ball at a pro level, but you see, when you look at pro tennis now, you see the same players winning, and/or you see the same coaches winning, right? So like you don't see like a lot of like first-time Grand Slam champions with a first-time Grand Slam championship coach. You see a lot of like coaches who've coached other players to Grand Slams, coaching a new player to a Grand Slam. Or you see a player who's won a Grand Slam with a new coach, but the player has won a couple Grand Slams. And I think like the professionalism, the preparation, the match management, the schedule management, the management of your on-court life, making sure it doesn't spill over into the tennis court. Like all those things is what I enjoy. And I think those are, it's where the big bucks come. Right? All the stuff you don't see. You can hire somebody else at a club in Chicago to teach you how to make your forehand 10% better. But all the other stuff.
Nice. So how do kids get involved with Access Tennis? How do they find you? What's the path to coming here?
Man, this is like super easy. Our membership is $25 a month, $300 for a year, which is cheaper than the YMCA. Right? This place is meant to provide unprecedented access to tennis. You enroll in a group, even 1 hour group, you get free unlimited court time. Right? We offer private lessons. It is so you go to accesstennis.org, sign up for a membership. From there, we got coaches, we have groups. Once you're in the system, you get free court time. We got 3 ball machines. We have the ball machine that costs $12,000 that serves to you, so you have no excuse not to make the return, right? And then we have free tutoring available. So, I mean, to me, this is like it's engineered to be the best and easiest on-ramp for someone to start tennis. Now, if they choose to go somewhere else, that's fine. Move to Florida, go to another club in the city, that's fine. But this, to me, is set up to be the best on-ramp for a tennis naive person.
Awesome. And last question here. How was your experience with winning the U.S. Open with Sloan Stephens? Like, what do you remember about that, and what do you take from that as a coach?
Oh, man.
One of your players.
So, I didn't play pro tennis. Never wanted to. When I went to U.S. Open with Sloan, that was like my 3rd time ever going to the U.S. Open as a spectator or at all, right? But it was so interesting because, you think about like times in your coaching career where you're working with a player where everything's sort of aligned, right? So, the year before that, Sloan was injured. She spent a lot of time here working with kids, a lot of time with my family, a lot of development as a young person happened, a lot of, I think what's interesting about that process is when you're injured, you can actually improve. When you lose in Miami, and you got to go play Charleston next week, and you lose in Charleston, you got to go play Madrid, and you lose in Madrid, you got to play Rome. There's actually not a lot of time to improve. You can't really like change things. But I think when you're injured for 10 months, now we can change a lot of stuff, right? And it was really good to like have the time to like very calmly change things and make a few tweaks. And then, before U.S. Open, it was semis in Montreal, it was semis in Cincinnati, so it wasn't just U.S. Open out of nowhere. It was like, okay, now we're uninjured after making a few tweaks and changes, and then now we're ready to play, right, at a different level than we played prior to the injury. And so, that 2 weeks was just like, I was so focused. Even my family was like, okay, the kids are out of school, should we come? I said, nope. we on a roll now. I wore the same shirt for 2 weeks in a row. I washed it the day before the final, and I was even nervous about washing it. Right? It was hot, and it was like a long sleeve, like pullover. It was like 95 degrees, but I had to keep it on for good luck. But you try to just lock into the routines and like pay as close attention to every detail. Ate at the same restaurant 14 days in a row, wore the same clothes 14 days in a row. Paying heavy attention to the conversation. And then that year, what people don't realize is, she played 6 out of 7 seeds. So she played an unseeded player the first round. Then every player after that was a seeded player, right? So, I mean, it was like a lot of preparation. I wasn't going out. I wasn't doing anything. It was like, okay, let's watch some more video. I wake up in the middle of the night, watch some more video, just to try to find like, again, you're playing against the best players in the world. You probably only have like one opportunity to exploit. And you want to make sure you can like identify that and you don't miss it, right? Or you don't misjudge it. And so for me, it was so stressful. I mean, after every win, I come home and I would just literally sit on the ground in the shower, because you also don't want to be the guy that mess it up for the player. Sloan's very good at following directions. So it was like, if I say do A, B, and C, she's going to do A, B, and C, and we're going to win or we're going to go down doing A, B, and C, right? She's not one of those players where like Djokovic mid-match might say, screw that game plan, I'm going to come up with my own thing. That's not kind of what it is, right? Sloan's going to say, you told me to do it, and I did it, right? And it's either your fault or mine, right, or not. So I was trying to like really stay locked in and like get it right for her. And so we did it. And so when she won, it was like, oh, this is, it's life changing. Because again, when you think about the American coaches, like English speaking American coaches since the year 2000, who have coached a male or a female to a Grand Slam title. Lindsay Davenport's husband coached her. Richard Williams coached the Williams sisters. So I was like the third, right? And in terms of African American coaches, it was Dr. Walter Johnson coached Althea and Arthur Ashe, Richard Williams coached his daughters, and it was me. So, I mean, it wasn't like, it was like, now you're in rare air, because there's not even a lot of people in America right now who have coached somebody to a Grand Slam title. Just, me, David Witt was with Venus for a long time as a hitting partner and then a coach. And then Lindsay Davenport's husband.
Nice.
So when people start talking stuff, I'm like, okay, since year 2000, name me somebody else. I know this person in Florida is good. This person in California is great. But they didn't sit where I sit. You know what I mean? They were great before 2000. But since 2000,
right,
we got nothing. So for me, I knew that opportunity because I started getting calls from legendary coaches like, hey, just so you know. I'm like, well, you're making me nervous. Don't tell me that. You know what I mean? I want to overthink tomorrow. But it was like a life-changing opportunity for her, which is most rewarding. And then, for me as a coach too, who didn't play pro tennis, played at HBCU, was in the middle of building an academy in the fourth poorest zip code in the city, it legitimized everything that I had been trying to sell the city on. Hey, we should build this tennis mecca on 54th and State. And they're like, for what? For what, right? Why are we going to build a place bigger than East Bank? Why are we going to build a place bigger than Midtown? Why are we going to build all those tennis courts right here? Right? Shouldn't we build on the north side? I'm like, no, we should build it right here. They're like, well, will they come to you? I'm like, yeah, they'll come to me. Right? It was like 2014. And then 2017, literally the first person to call my phone after Sloan won the US Open, I was still clapping hands. And Rom says, I told you they'd come to me. Right? So, it was like a aha moment for both of us, because he took a risk building this. I took a risk building this, right? And we were kind of going forward in this process. And so it was like rewarding. It was like almost like too good to be true. We literally we were like painting this place as she won, right? So it was like the perfect storm. So it was life-changing, but it was great. I'm more than for myself, I'm happy for her, right? Because I think at that point, she had been the only American to beat Serena Williams. When she beat Serena at the Australian Open, she was the only American player to ever beat Serena Williams. She was the only player at that point to be top 25, a woman, to be top 25 WTA, and I don't think she had won a tournament. Right, so it was like, hey, now you're taking who's supposed to be the next Serena, the next Venus, the next great, and now you're actually helping this person fulfill that instead of being, the person that didn't make it. You know what I mean? So I think that was like really rewarding. And then, I hate to say it, but January of that year, I told her mama, she couldn't even walk. Sloan couldn't even walk this one. I said, she going to US Open this year. Everyone's like, she can't even walk. I'm like, trust me, she going to US Open this year. Literally. So then, and then I looked at her and said, I told you so. So it was great. It was, life changing. Awesome. It was great. And then, obviously after that is like what becomes really interesting is how people give and take credit away in tennis, right? When we have like a legacy coach who we know who's in the club, they just are so great. They just right? Or if we have a great player, they say, it doesn't matter who coaches them. They could do it on their own. Like Djokovic, right? Some people say, Djokovic can coach himself, right? So they give like less credit to the coach in those situations and maybe give too much credit to the coach in other situations. And so I remember like the day after Sloan won the US Open. Now again, third coach in America to coach a Grand Slam champion since 2000. Somebody said, well, Kamau didn't really coach her to the US Open. He more managed the process, right? I was like, well, Joe Torre managed the Yankees. So I'll take that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're right, I'm managing everything, right? I'm managing the conversation in the car, the agent, what we eat, what time we eat, who we practice with, what time we practice. All right, so yeah, I'm managing all that. So I didn't coach it, I managed it, I'll take that. So, that becomes interesting. And then she went on to lose 10 matches in a row after the US Open. So then that becomes interesting, right? Because it becomes a fluke. And we get to the finals of French Open next year. And I was like, all right, it's not a fluke, you know. So that I think the final of the French Open was even more rewarding because it was like, we're back. You know what I mean? So the fluke is back, right? So it was, you know, so that was sort of interesting sort of year.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you and appreciate everything you're doing for Chicago tennis. I want to say that you're an inspiration to me and I hope to all the other coaches because you're really stepping up and showing that Chicago is a mecca of tennis and that we can do it here too. And I appreciate you.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you
Thanks
for
having me.
everything.
Thank y'all.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks so much.